Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Have you seen any good movies recently? I understand with the heat going on that you might be in the mood for a classic, and what's more classic than James Bond? Now you may be familiar with Agent 007 himself, but rather than talk about our titular hero, I'd rather discuss the various women he surrounds himself with. And I should know, I marathoned all 25 movies in the James Bond canon, and that's not something I would recommend to anyone particularly sane. That is a lot of movies over 50 years. And that's plenty of female characters too. But you can easily separate them into 4 different categories: the sexual partner, the main sidekick, the femme fatale, and the sacrificial lamb. Without further ado, let's begin. Now, what are the 2 most important traits of James Bond? The first is that he's cool. The second is that he's promiscuous. And that naturally brings us into our first archetype, that of the sexual partner. Sexual partner is one of the most common roles, arguably the most common, that women can fulfill within the James Bond average narrative. In fact, our hero has slept with over 50 female characters so far in the movie's chronological history. That would be averaging over 2 per film. One of the very first in this very long line of lovers is Honey Rider, portrayed by Ursula Andress in Dr. No. And here you can see her in her iconic white swimsuit. Now, the primary purpose that Honey Rider serves within the narrative of Dr. No is to be a sexual prize for our hero. She does not participate in any action scenes, nor does she have a definitive arc. Comic book writer Kelly Sue DeConnick has identified characters such as Honey Rider as sexy lamps, stating in an interview that if a female character can be replaced with a sexy lamp and nothing changes, you might need a better draft. But more concerning to me, however, is how the series handles the issue of consent. One very notable example being that of Pussy Galore in Goldfinger, portrayed by Honor Blackman. Her sex scene is rough and violent, and if the original source material's revelation of her being a lesbian is anything to go by, explicitly corrected rape. With that unpleasantness out of the way, let's move on to our second archetype, which often overlaps with the last one, that of the main sidekick. Yes, shockingly, women are allowed to do things besides have sex with James Bond. Author Lisa Funnell, who has covered the extensive history of James Bond within her books, has identified the Pierce Brosnan era as being the best time for main sidekicks. Particularly, I should say, using the term action hero. And there's a very long quote from her. I'm going to abridge it a bit. The action hero is presented as more of an equal to Bond. She may challenge or question his authority and disagree with the plan, come up with a new one. I'm going to stop it there. It kind of goes on. And these action heroes are beloved by James Bond fans across the globe. As for me, Wayland from Tomorrow Never Dies is one of my favorites. Of course, the rule is that all of them The female psychic is never allowed to outshine James Bond, and most egregious of these is Mary Goodnight from The Man with the Golden Gun, portrayed by Brett Eklund, whose damsel in distress moments often hinder rather than help James Bond. Naturally, this has made her very unpopular with fans. But not every female character within the world of James Bond is heroic, however, which leads us into our third archetype, the femme fatale. Film critic and former Time staffer Steve Purcell has described the femme fatale fuss as a femininity of James Bond, often trying to seduce him, but 007 is more concerned with survival. The World Is Not Enough's Electra King, played by Sophie Marceau, is a prime example of this. She seems innocent at first, but she uses her feminine wiles to seduce and manipulate multiple characters throughout the narrative, our hero included. A clear double standard can be seen then between James Bond and his conquests. When our male main character pursues a woman lustfully or in a sexual manner, he's a player. If a woman does the same towards him, she's a slut. This ideology has driven rape culture in our society. Another femme fatale I'd like to talk about is Xenia Onatopp from GoldenEye, portrayed by Famke Johansson. As you may have noticed, her name is a sexual pun. Her dominatrix getup is portrayed as threatening. Her sexuality is written to be off-putting and disgusting, further illustrating the double standard. Finally, not all women within the James Bond universe survive to the end. Which brings us to our fourth archetype, the sacrificial lamb. The sacrificial lamb's purpose is to be hurt, or more accurately, die, in order to motivate Mr. Bond into action. Most infamous of these being Jill Masterson from Goldfinger, portrayed by Shirley Eaton, and whose gilded corpse you can see here. Comic book writer Gail Simone has her own term for such unfortunate characters as Jill, that being women in refrigerators. Simone would chronicle over 100 examples on a website dedicated to the topic from comic books alone. As she states over there, it's not unhealthy to be a female character in a comic book, and arguably the same can be said of being a female character in a James Bond movie, particularly that of the tragic tale of Tracy from On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Tracy is the only female character, the only Bond girl, to marry him. And that marriage lasts for only a few hours because it ends with her being shot in the head by the villains. Tracy, portrayed by Diana Rigg, is likable. She's my personal favorite. But that doesn't really erase her primary sole purpose within the narrative. Tracy dies so that James Bond can have a sad backstory for future movies. Now, I think we all have a better understanding of how women within the world of James Bond are written. We discussed the four archetypes of the main sidekick, the sexual partner, the main sidekick, the femme fatale, and the sacrificial lamb, and how these archetypes can be found in other forms of popular culture and media. Thank you for listening. And, by the way, if your favorite Bond girl is Tiffany Case, we can't be friends. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.